Well, once again, I'm here with Johnny A. here at Wildwood Guitars.
Hey, Steve.
Having a great time. Great seeing you again.
Nice to see you again. Thank
so
you
we've
for
gotten
having
to talk about a lot of things,
Yes.
about your inspiration, your family support of your music, your relationship with Gibson guitars, your love affair with Gibson guitars. Maybe you could share, I was hoping you could share with our friends some about your recordings, your recording career, how it got going, how it has evolved, where it's headed.
Well, it was accidental. It really was. I had been working with Peter Wolf for about 7 years, and he kind of pulled the plug on the project live, and I was out of work. I have a family, and I decided to put together a little trio out of survival, and decided to have it be instrumental, so I didn't have to be beholden on a singer. I just started working. I was living in Salem, Massachusetts at the time, the Witch City. And I basically had this residency gig that I did, I think it was every Tuesday night or something, this place called the Dodge Street Grill. And we'd be playing there, and I was working on a style and, you know, working on these instrumental versions of vocal songs and then writing songs and doing them and working them out at this place. And one day this former rep for Polygram Records walked in. He was from the area too. And he loved what we were doing. So he said, look, you know, there's a guy around town that's got a local label, but he's got national distribution. He said, I'd love to bring him by to hear you, maybe be interested in doing something with you. And I'm going, yeah, sure. You know, it's just, okay, sure, sounds cool. I mean, I heard that a lot of times, you know.
Right.
So he brought this guy by, very nice guy, kind of unassuming, really nice, sweetheart guy. And he had this record company, and he wanted me to record for him. And I said, well, okay, but I have two conditions. And he said, well, what are they? I said, look, I'm not making a record for my ego where I have to hear myself play. I know what I do. That's not the idea. So if I make a record, it has to be the record that I want to make artistically and the way I want to make it, which is from a recording standpoint and the technical end of it. He agreed. And, you know, one of the things I had in the contract was 100% creative control over it. So we started to make the record. I wanted to make an analog record, you know, tape machines, Studer tape machines, you know, real console, the whole thing. So we started to make the record, and about halfway through the record, kind of ran out of money, the guy. We were about $20,000, $22,000 into the record. And he said, well, listen, you're just going to have to mix it. We have to put it out the way it is. And I said, He said, well, I got to do it. I don't have any more money. I said, you can't. And we came to kind of blows. And basically, I reminded him that I had 100% creative control, and he couldn't release the record without finishing it the way that it had to be finished. So he said, well, I'm out of money. And I said, well, you can't release it. And then he said, well, I'm gonna. Then I reminded him about the copyright and all the other stuff and what the potential lawsuit would be. So he said, well, I'm gonna take the tapes, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll buy the tapes. I'll buy the tapes from you, and I'll just finish this thing myself. I didn't know how I was gonna do it, but I said that. So he said, well, I'm gonna take the tapes home in the studio, from the studio, and then, we'll be in contact. I said, well, listen, don't take these tapes out of the studio, because once you take the tapes out of the studio, I'm not going to buy them for anything. They'll be worthless to me. I mean, they're magnetic tape. It's fragile. I don't know what his apartment's like. I don't know if he's going to put them on a radiator, he's going to put them next to a speaker. I said, once you take them out of that, they're compromised, and I won't want to buy them for anything. And you can give them to me, and I won't want them. So we came up with a price, and he ended up selling. He ended up getting into some financial problems, and I ended up getting the tapes from him, and I bought them. And I took out some loans, put my house up, remortgaged it for some money, and finished the record. Put it out. That was the Sometime Tuesday Morning album. And it came out in S99 locally. That same person from Polygram Records was also responsible for opening up a little music store in New England, the first store called Newbury Comics. Newbury Comics is a big independent chain. He's probably got 30 stores now. He brought me in to see the president, Mike Dries, great guy. And Paul said, this Paul Wennick, the guy from Polygram, said, Mike, I want to introduce you to Johnny A. He's got a new record up. and it's getting played on local radio, but we don't have no distribution.
Right.
He says, is there anything you can do for him? So Mike said, yeah, I think I can help out. And this is in the days when people were buying CDs and it made a difference. Well, you know what a listening post position is. That's where you go up to Borders Books or any of these places.
Right.
You put on headphones and there'll be 10 albums on there and you can listen to them,
Right.
preview the records. Well, record companies pay a lot of money to have an album on there. They'll typically pay about $2,000 a month per location to have your record up there. So Mike, at the time, had 22 stores, and he offered me a listening post spot in all 22 stores for 3 months for free.
Wow.
So my record went up on that. I got airplay on the local radio station, which ended up going regionally in all 6 New England states. And because of that, the radio airplay and the distribution through Mike, I ended up selling about 8,500 copies of that record. And it was capping out. I mean, I knew that I had to do something else with the record or it was going to die. It was just a kind of a local phenomenon. It was a grassroots thing that was happening. So I was trying to get record deals, and I was calling everybody. People were actually starting to call me because of the sales and the reports that were coming out on the radio. They'd see the airplay reports and wanted to know, well, who's this guy? What's the song? What's happening? And so I'd be getting calls from Sony and Epic and RCA and Blue Note, and I ended up auditioning for doing a showcase for Blue Note, and they just, with Brian Backus and Bruce Lundville. Bruce Lundville's a giant in the industry, and he was like, well, I love the act, I love what you do, but I don't know what we would do with it. He says, it's just, I don't know where we would place it. So this was pre-Norah Jones with Blue Note. So one thing led to another, and one day I'm driving home from a rehearsal. I think it was my birthday, November 14th, and I called in for my messages, and Steve Vai was on my machine, saying that he had heard about the record. Would I give him a call? He wants to release it. So that was the relationship with Steve and Favored Nations, and sometime Tuesday Morning came out on Favored Nations, and then the second record, Get Inside, came out on Favored Nations, and then I left the label. And I put out a instructional DVD with Warner Brothers. They put out a couple tab books out for the first 2 albums. And then most recently, this past year, I put out a live DVD CD one November night. Right. And I'm self-distributing on my own label now, and you kind of have to go to the website, johnnyaa.com,
Here we are.
to kind of get anything. And right now, I'm in the process. I just built a recording studio to do the next record, and hopefully it comes out by the middle of 2012, another studio album.
We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
So how do you record? What do you do anything different or unusual to get your sound?
Well, I don't think it's unusual, but other people, as other guitar players, think it's unusual. I mean, I don't use speakers. I record direct. I play live direct. I don't use speakers. I haven't used speakers somewhere halfway through my tenure with Peter Wolf. I stopped using miking a speaker. I was using Marshall 30th anniversaries amps, model 6100s and 6101s in the combos. And I went to a sound check early one day, and they had an XLR jack in the back of those amps that says compensated line-out speaker emulation. So I was with the sound man one day, and I said, hey, let's see what this thing sounds like. You know, because typically I'd take the 412 cabinet, put a 57 on a speaker. And so we just listened to it and went back and forth, A-beat it a bunch of times. I said, it sounds pretty good. And I said, I'll tell you what, let's do a blind taste test.
Right.
Just go switch back and forth, don't tell me what you're doing, and write down which one I say I like better. More often than not, I picked the DI that I liked.
Wow.
So once I kind of came to that, then what I did was I had a small Shure FP32 field production mixer. Those kind of ones that they use for sports games where there's no EQ, it's just a mic pre, and that's it, headphones. I would go home and I'd plug my CD player into it, and I would listen to all my favorite guitar players and just listen to their headphones without any EQ, without anything, and listen to their tones and try to decipher where the treble was, where the bass was, what was making this like it was. And then I'd plug my Marshall directly into that field production mixer with the same headphones, start to dial in the tones. And from that day on, that's the way I record. I mean, the first 2 albums went to tape. I used the Studer 800 on the first album, A800, and a Studer A827 on the second. And I also own a very, very old vintage Neve germanium mic pre, a model 1058, which my path on the first album was as pure as you can get. It was the guitar with a 6-foot cable into the front of the Marshall, out with a Monster Studio Pro 1000 XLR, into my mic pre, my Neve 1058, out of the Neve 1058, bypass the console, go directly into the back of the tape deck. So I wasn't even monitoring through the console, as clean a path as I could get. Record totally dry, no compression, no reverb, no echo, no effects, no nothing. It allows me to build whatever sound, whatever ambience is, however I want the guitar to sit later on in the mix. A little difficult, but it also doesn't commit you to, let's say you go in, and they're great studios. Let's say you go into the, like the Power Station in its day, or Ocean Way, or Cherokee, or Electric Ladyland, or all these great studios. They all have a sound to them. Their rooms all have a sound, for better or for worse. And they could be a great sound, but you mic I don't know, some kind of an amp, AC30, super reverb, whatever. You got your sound, you're playing in there, you mic the speakers, you got the room mic'd up a little, and it could be a great sound. But if you don't want that sound on a song, it's there.
You're stuck.
You're stuck, for better or for worse. So I just built all my ambiences from the ground up on every song, and I just tailored it.
It's a beautiful sound. I remember Johnny's been gracious enough to come out and do a couple, I don't know what we would call them, workshops that turned into more performance.
Love Fest. We'll call them Love
there
Fests.
We go. They were tremendous. And I can remember the first time you came in, you set up, and I was looking around, and you finally said, "No, I got to explain this setup. You're going to love this setup." So what's the advantage to the way you perform live? What does that setup do for you?
Consistency.
Yeah.
I'm a freak about consistency. I would hate when I would go into gigs day to day and I'd have the same amp at the same settings and it just did not sound the same, did not react the same. I mean, in some respects, it's still not consistent what I'm listening to from day to day, because I'm the product of listening to whatever monitors are at whatever given venue. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not so great. I carry around my own monitors in case I'm into a situation where the monitors are just horrible. But more often than not, it's the consistency and the personality of my guitar stays pretty much on point day to day.
Well, that would give the engineer, there's not excess stage volume.
Yeah, there's no
so
speaker cabinets.
I
mean, even the bass player in the band goes direct. He doesn't have a speaker cabinet. So any kind of speakers that are on stage are just fold-back speakers that are facing the back of the stage.
So how about effects and things, since a lot of guitar players seem to be enamored by effects and they all want to know what it is you're doing? Any favorites?
My live rig, it's pretty simple. I mean, I use 2 Marshall JMP1s. I run in basically parallel mono, I guess stereo, but it's really dual mono is the way I really run. And I load it with the Johnny A signature, goes down into a Dunlop 535Q wah-wah pedal, the one with the 2 batteries, the early ones, so it's 18 volt. And I go into a TC Electronic G system to get my time-based effects, which has all your delays, reverbs, chorusing, flanging if you want, octave, compression, whatever you want. And in the TC Electronic G system, you have loops where you can insert your own effects. For my gains, I use BK Butler tube drivers, and I have 3 of them, and they're set for different stages of gain. And I use the JMPs only clean. They're kind of clean, set up like a really nice sounding Fender Twin or something like that. And in the effects loop of the JMP ones, I have a Lexicon MX400 delay that's set for just a room ambience. And then they all go into a radial JD6 DI box. And I have that set 2 ways. I have it so I can set ascend directly to the front of house, and if I want to not have the front of house control my monitors, it jumps over to another set of channels and comes back to me if I want.
Sounds simple.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, in your hands it sounds miraculous. So once again, man, thanks for coming. This has been a special treat for me.
Thank you so much.
Come back and see us again.
Will do.
Okay.